Rob, welcome.
Take two.
Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Listen, I gotta be honest, like I really was looking forward to this show because I know the things that you're passionate about and I know you're very knowledgeable. And I also know that some of your knowledge is a little bit on the controversial side. It's not as it's not on. Listen. We'll get in details
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
talk about all of it. But at least to me personally, some of the stuff that I'm hearing is not as common. Let's put it this way. Obviously, everything that you talk about is, um, like backed up by research and science, and so it's not like you don't know what you're talking about. Obviously, you have your sources checked and everything is in line. But some of it, when I'm listening to it, I was like, wow, I really want to know more. Because it's personally I'm very curious. So I want to start because we're gonna talk about some really interesting stuff. I want to start with you telling us a little bit about your background. Uh, how did you get into coaching, like fitness coaching, and how did you become so passionate about nutrition? And yeah, just maybe tell us a little bit of that.
So I'll be honest, you were lagging for like the last minute of that, so I caught a few words out of there.
Okay.
I heard the words controversial and all that kind of stuff, which I'm guilty as charged. I know. I try not to go on the deep end with a lot of people when I meet them for the first time because they just give me a look. It's like, what are you talking about? I just want my kid to get better at sports. It's like, yeah, I know, I understand. This is all part of the process,
Yeah.
that type of thing. So, did you ask me to do an intro just for myself?
Yeah, just a little bit of background, because we're gonna talk about some heavy stuff, and very interesting stuff. So I think it's better that people get to know you a little bit before we get into that.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll dial it all the way back to pretty much when I was a kid. So I played hockey, baseball, volleyball, a little bit of tennis, and a little bit of football, and a little bit of basketball as well too as I was growing up. Hockey, baseball, volleyball at decently high levels, although I didn't make it anywhere near close to pro. I like to pretend that I could have if I did things differently, but that's what everyone says. So it's that's pretty much there. So I grew up with sports. I love sports, that type of thing. I went to school for nursing because my goal was to be a doctor at some point. So I was really into like all the medical everything. Pretty much, I got an opportunity to work in a few hospitals around the GTA and that type of stuff, and got a couple of really cool stories out of it. I've worked sideline for a bunch of sports. So I've worked sideline for rugby, Ontario, and Canada, and then in the GTHL with a bunch of different ages, along with a bunch of different sports, including the Special Olympics as well too, which is always a fun experience. And that's kind of my background with most of the athletic stuff in terms of like straight up education. So I've been to school for psych, I've been to school for nursing, I've been to school for a bachelor of science and all that kind of stuff. And I don't really like riding off of those programs and degrees because I'll be honest, I don't really use anything from those programs anymore. It's a great starting off point, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it I
Yeah.
feel is just it's just like it's here. It's like the base, like, oh,
Yep.
welcome to athletics and health and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
outside of that, honestly, I don't really use much.
So what do
So
you
my actual
what? Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
no, ask your question. Go on.
So what do you get your where do you get your information from then? Like,
It's a
because you
great
said
question.
like how do you yeah how do you build on your education?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I got started as a personal trainer in one of the Good Lives, and I had a buddy there that was kind of like my mentor, and he showed me a couple conferences and a couple seminars, just in terms of like personal training development, athletic, not so much athletic development, although it was a part of it, but just development as a coach and development as a trainer. So
Mm.
just ways to get people moving and all that kind of stuff. It's called Swiss. If anyone's interested, it was actually run out of Mississauga for the last couple of years, except for the pandemic, where they had to move down to Columbus. But it was great. It's like 40 different presenters of all different walks of life, chiros, physios, medical doctors, trainers, strength and conditioning coaches, just random guys that know a bunch of stuff. And they all present an hour each. And then you can kind of follow those guys as they go around the globe. So there's some guys down in the States that I went down to and trained. I went to Columbus, Ohio, and trained with a couple of guys down there at Elite FTS and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I got to go around different schools, went down to California to go train with a world record holder and a couple lifts and that type of thing. Went to Montreal to go train with a guy who does a lot of fascial stuff, along with Tennis
Mm,
Canada and that kind of thing. So I mean,
mm,
it's not all in one place, but it's from like 40, 50 different mentors and just picking up little things as we're going and developing ideas and developing concepts with the people that I work with. And then you add in books, you add in other podcasts, you add in just anything that you can find. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, well, here's how to be an athlete 101, because that doesn't really
yes,
exist. But it's
that's
just
right.
like, oh, we'll take a little piece here, we'll take a little piece there, we'll take a little piece here, and then we put that sum of knowledge together, and all of a sudden now I have an answer to a lot of the problems that I come up with, and I have a foundation, and I have something to build on, which is pretty
Yeah.
good because I'll have an athlete that just walks in the door and I know nothing about them. They know nothing about me, but I can meet them to where they at because of how many different tools that I feel like I have in my toolbox. So it's like I had an athlete that come in last week and his dad was like, "Hey, I don't want him to use any weights." And like we're in a gym. So it's okay. That takes away about 50% of the stuff that we can use, but it's no problem because we can work with that. I can still find ways to get you stronger, faster, and all that kind of stuff without even touching them. And we're
Makes
good.
sense. Makes sense. How come people still are afraid of weights? Like where does this misconception is coming from? Because I keep hearing it like from parents as well. Like, oh, like I don't want him to go to a fitness coach because they're gonna use weights, and I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a tough answer because you got to look at it from both perspectives. I think from my perspective and from your perspective, we both I think can see the value of using resistance in training because that's how you kind of push through obstacles and that's how you push through certain barriers in terms of muscularly, nervous system wise, or whatever. Because sometimes you just need something to work against, something to push back on you, something to force you to work a little bit harder, and that gets you going a little bit more. Most of the parents that I've worked with that have concerns working with weights are usually younger kids, and it's usually the parents don't work out themselves, so they're not really experienced with like a gym setting and gym culture. So when they think of the gym, they think of like Arnold, and they think of those bodybuilders, like, oh, we're gonna get ripped, let's get going, pump it out, 20 reps, 40 reps, 60 reps, that type of thing. Like, oh, we're gonna get big arms, big legs. And they're right in that sense where that doesn't really do much for athletics, but that's also incorrect because that's also not how we train for athletics, and
yeah,
that's not how I train when I'm working with athletes. So there is a barrier there for a lot of people where they're thinking like when they're coming in, it's like, oh, what's this guy doing? I'm dressed the way I am. I have a snapback on. I wear like fancy shoes and that type of thing. So I
yeah,
have
yeah.
a certain demeanor to me as well too. But I think once they get in and they see the training and you see what we do or what I do when I'm working with younger kids especially, it makes sense. And it's a little bit more intuitive. Like I think we talked a little bit about this over summer when I was working with you guys out in
Yeah.
the tennis camps. Like we didn't have any weights. So what did we do? We jumped, we sprinted, we created challenges, we created games, we were lunging, we were push up, we were just controlling our body the best way possible. And that's always the goal, I think, for athletics of just having complete mastery of your body. Weights can help because again, it gives you a little bit of stimulus to kind of focus on, okay, I'm focusing here, I'm focusing here, I'm focusing here, and this weight's helping me with the resistance. But it's definitely possible to do it body weight, and there's definitely other ways to do it. It just involves a little bit more focus, a little bit more time, and a little bit more, I'm gonna say knowledge, but just the focus to go down this path right
Yeah,
over
it's
here
it's
because we're
true.
still trying to reach the same goal.
Yeah, it's true because I remember when I was a kid, and the argument back then, like 20 something years ago, the argument was that you cannot use weight with younger athletes because it stops their growth. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
pretty sure you heard that too, maybe from parents, maybe from somebody else.
yeah. A couple
Like,
times recently this year,
so
actually.
so can we maybe can we talk a little bit about that, maybe in one sentence, like why it's not the case?
Yeah. So the that comes from a point where there's growth plates inside kids. Growth plates that have it harder, let's say at the knee, let's say at the elbow, at the quad, wherever it is, because the bones are always growing and that type of thing. So what we don't want to do is stress out the growth plate so much that it stops growing and it hardens up. That's the
Okay.
idea
Okay.
that's behind it. Now, that being said, when you sprint, when you jump, when you do any high intensity body weight exercise, you're putting upwards almost about 10 times of your body weight into the ground. which is a lot of force. Like if you're going full maximum sprints, you're putting a lot of force into the ground, more than I could ever put on any kid inside a weight room.
Mm.
And it's a hard concept to understand because you can see the weights and you can see the weight and you can see the force going into it. And you're like, oh my God, that's too heavy. That's too heavy. But it's like nowhere close to what we're asking kids to do on a daily basis, whether we're doing like a mile run, whether we're doing 20, 30, 40-meter sprints, we're doing bounding, we're doing jumps, whatever it is. Those are actually technically the more dangerous ones, although they're not dangerous either, I don't think. But they involve more force into the bones and the growth plates and all that kind of thing. And honestly, I haven't come across a single situation where a growth plate has hardened because of resistance training or a growth plate has hardened because of physical training. I haven't heard of it. Maybe it's happened somewhere that I don't know about, but there's been studies that have completely disregarded that point of, well, if you do this, you're not going to grow. If you
Yeah.
do this, you're going to stay short, you're going to stay compressed. And again, I think a second point on top of that is if you see top weightlifters across the world, like Olympic weightlifters or power lifters or whatever it is, they have that short and compact body. They do. So I
Yeah.
think to a certain point, people see it's like, oh, well, they're at the pinnacle of their sport and they look like this. And it's definitely not the way that we want most of our top athletes looking, because most top athletes, I think, are a little bit longer, a little bit lankier, and have a kind of that whippiness feel to them. And they're right in that concept. But again, I think it's just a matter of the situation. Like you're going to get really good at lifting weights if you have small levers, so you'll do it more.
Yeah.
So you're already a small and compact person, and then you add in some weight training, you can get really good at that. Like Eddie Cohen is one of the top powerlifting, weightlifting guys in the world. He's like 5'5". He's tiny. He's absolutely tiny. But it's not because he started lifting weights. He's just a tiny dude. He has small levers. It makes everything a little bit easier. He doesn't have to go as much as, say, like, I don't know if you know Taco Fall in the NBA. He's like 7'2" or whatever it is. And he's got like this 10-foot wingspan on both sides.
Yeah.
That's everything. It's going to
You
be
don't
way
ever
hard.
you don't ever see parents talk about, well, let's put my kid in basketball so he's going to be tall, right? So it's not.
Right.
It's just a fact. It's just like the reality of the sport that these are the body types that are successful
Right.
in this sport,
Yeah.
right? So that's why you see that.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Again, and it's like if we're gonna take it into one sport, you'll have football players, you'll have your skilled guys, so like the wide receivers, all the guys on the outside that are really good at movement and pretty much they would probably be pretty good at every sport just because how wiry and how athletic they are. And then you have linemen who are built different, but they all train the same. They all do the same lifts, they all do the same exercises. It's just this person's built differently and they're doing it for a different reason. This person is built differently and they're doing it for this reason.
Yeah.
And again, I know it's hard for a parent because there's always emotion involved and there's always, oh, it's my kid, I just don't want to mess anything up and all that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
it's a real cultural point that I think is going to start going away in the next 20 years because it's already gone down by a big amount. In every other sport, I know tennis is just lagging behind a little bit in Canada in terms of the off-court training, but we'll get there. That's
Yeah.
no worries.
So listen, we talked about bodies of an athlete, yeah, like of your basketball player, your power lifter. When it comes to tennis, what do you think? Is there such a thing as like ideal body for tennis? Because you keep hearing it sometimes from coaches, from tennis coaches. You know, like this kid has a tennis body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on that?
Um, I think when we're talking about kids, I don't think it matters really. Like anything below like 21 years old, I don't really. I try not to go by body type. I just go by what I see that's happening from the body more than anything. But that's a separate part of the discussion. But in terms of an actual body type, yeah, longer, lanky players are usually a little bit better as they get older, but they're usually a little bit worse as they're younger because they have these long, lanky bodies and they don't know what to do with them just yet. So it's like in the younger ages, like the U14, U12, U10, you'll always see smaller players, I think, that are always the top because they can move. And if you can move really well at that age, you're gonna win all the time. Because I think, but correct me if I'm wrong, it's like maybe 5-ball rallies in each point for tournaments at that age, maybe.
U14.
Yeah, U12, U14, U10, like
It's pretty.
the lower end.
It's. I would say it's actually longer, in my opinion, because
Yeah,
they don't have yet the physical ability to finish the point as often as they want.
right.
So and again, I'm talking like top level, right? Like your best national players and your like best international level players, you would see rallies pretty long from my experience.
Right.
Could be wrong at this point. Maybe it's changing, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. But again, for those younger players, the ones that are more compact, I feel like they just get around the court easier. But
hundred
as
percent.
they get older, if they stay at that same compact size, they just won't have the length to keep up with the rallies. They won't have the length to keep up with the pace back and forth, and they almost have. I feel like they almost have more of an aggressive athletic game as they get older. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's just a feeling. Just watching player like shorter and more compact players as they get into like the U16s and the U18s, and then past that, if you're smaller, you have to be crazy athletic to keep up at that point,
Yeah,
just because
yeah,
how fast you have to move and how much you
that's
have to
very
do.
true.
Whilst for longer players, while you don't necessarily have to move as fast because you have the length, you have the extension to get into the corners, come back, whatever it is, you may not be fast, but you can still get there. It's a little bit easier to start whipping your bodies around as you get older, as you start learning more about your body, as you develop physically, and that type of thing. So, in terms of a tennis body, yeah, length is usually the best. And then, but I think what most coaches kind of confuse there, it's not necessarily the body, it's how you use it.
Mm.
It's so like you'll have a kid who's like a little bit longer and a little bit lankier, but their rebound time off the ground is like that. They're able to
Yeah,
get in and out of the baseline like this. They have the mental aggressiveness to get here, get there. They understand the IQ of the play that's going on. And we're going to touch on this hopefully a little bit later, but that goes in with every child's development as they grow up. I don't think it's a specific body type. I think it's how you develop and how you grow both sides of your brain, your nutrition, all that kind of stuff, because it all plays into how you compete as an athlete. And if you're not here as an athlete, then none of that works, and you just turn into like a lump on the court. And we've had plenty of players that we've both seen where it's like, why aren't you moving? What are you doing? Let's go, get fired up, get going. And for a lot of those kids, it's just like they don't know how, or they don't have the tools to get there. So that's where I come in, and that's where you come in as well as a coach to try to figure out different ways to try and get these kids that may have a great body, like they may look great, but they don't know how to
yeah.
use it yet.
So how do you like? How would you teach that? Because I have parents, some because listen, I have parents sometimes coming to me and say, hey, my kid has really bad footwork, and I look at
Yeah,
them and they're just not intense. So it's not necessarily that they don't have bad footwork, just it just they don't have any footwork
they
at
don't
all.
have anything.
They're not moving their feet, right? So
Yeah,
and sometimes kids don't know how to move properly on the court. That's true, but a lot of it is just it's intensity related. So how do you
right.
go about that? How do you make their movement better? And
You got the
how
long
do you?
answer or the short answer?
Oh, we have all the time, man.
So the long answer goes all the way back to pregnancy. So literally,
Okay.
the two parents that are going through conception, the genetics of the father, the genetics of the mother, and that goes with their mental health at that point in time. That goes with their gut health at that point in time, their physical capabilities at that point in time, because all of that has
Really?
right, all of that has
Wow.
an effect on how the child develops, because the child's going to develop inside the mother's body. If the mother's body isn't functioning very well, you're not going to get very nutrients. You're not going to get good blood flow. You're not going to develop that child as well as possible straight out of the womb. So that starts 9 months before. And honestly, that probably starts 10 years before that even happens, because it takes a lot of effort, I think, as a parent, especially these days, to stay healthy, relatively
Yeah.
stress free, and leave like a good healthy lifestyle. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more. But for me, that's where it starts. So good health, good nutrition, good food, good sleep, lack of stress from both the parents at time of conception. And then all those 9 months all the way through while you're carrying a pregnancy, same thing. You can't let yourself kind of go off. And I mean, we all know the obvious ones like drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, but then
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
same ones where you have to be eating quality whole foods. You have to be getting enough water. You have to be out of stress. You have to put yourself in the best position, the healthiest body possible, to allow that child to develop the healthiest way. Now, if that doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world, because it's never the end of the world. The body is exceptional at adapting, like underratedly exceptional at adapting. So let's say now the child's out of the womb. Maybe we weren't perfect through pregnancy, whatever, that's fine. So it starts now where Every input that you have when for that child from 0 to 2 is huge. Every input that you put in. So that starts with their movement. Are they able to move around by themselves? It starts with that crawl on their belly where they're trying to move back and forth, they're wiggling. And watch this rotation right here. This is what every kid does when they're on the ground by themselves trying to figure out to move. This rotation right here also translates to sprints, translates to rotation of the core, translates to everything movement wise. You have to be able to move the hips, move the ribs, move the shoulders in order for you to perform at a max level. That starts when you're 0 to 2. It moves on when kids start to figure out how to roll, how to turn themselves, how to move around the house, how to move around on the ground. Translates to crawling. It translates to kind of that teeter-totter walk that you see most toddlers do, that type of thing. And then it just keeps building and it keeps building. And there's a bunch of developmental steps. I had the chart over there somewhere. I'm not going to bother to bring it out. Maybe if we have show notes, I'll put the PDF in there for all,
Yeah,
for all the
yeah,
parents and
we'll
things.
put it up. Yeah, we'll put it up.
Perfect. But it's the same developmental notes that you'll get from your general physician when you go in for a checkup for a kid. It's like you'll have a stage at 6 months. Like, is the kid crawling by here? Has the kid said these words by 8 months? Has the kid done this by this month? And it seems like a guideline and it seems like an optional thing, but it's not. It is not. If your kid hasn't hit those stages piece by piece all the way through, and I'm not usually this firm on most things, I am firm on this. If they don't hit those stages, they're behind in terms of the development. And that comes down, again, to the environment that this kid's put into. And what do we see these days, Bogdan? I don't know how many like little kids you've been around, but I've had the
Definitely not
pleasure of
0 to 2. Let me tell you.
but I've had the pleasure of being around some small kids, like either as babysitting or just being an uncle or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And a lot of these kids, parents will put them in like these seats and they'll give them an iPad and then they'll put them in front of the TV.
Don't get me
And it's like
started.
the legs are dangling, they're not touching the ground, the kid's just sitting there and they have their faces on the screen and it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And for the parent, I get it because again, the lifestyle these days, both parents are working usually.
Yeah.
It's from 9 to 5. They're coming back. They're tired. They don't want to do all the parenthood stuff. They have high performance programs to get to. They have Montessori. They have homework, whatever. It's a lot. It is a lot. And I'm not going to fault any parent for not doing any of these things or relying on these technology devices. But at the same time, you have to understand as a parent, the more you try and intervene with technology to get away from nature, the worse off you become across the board. That goes for adults, teenagers, kids, babies. If you're going to put your kid in front of an iPad and have them being stimulated 24/7 by this iPad, their brain is not going to develop the way that you want them to. One side of the brain will develop, the other side will not. And again, we'll talk about this a little bit more in a couple seconds, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the idea. It's like the kids need to move, they need to be outdoors, they need to learn how to move by themselves. Parents, don't grab your baby and try to get them to walk to speed up the process. Let them figure it out. Don't skip steps, follow the plan, stay consistent, and stay patient. And that's where the good things happen. I think the best parents that I've worked with are the ones that understand when to back off and let their kid just like, okay, go. Try it out, do it. I'm not afraid that you're going to hurt yourself because every kid and every human being on the planet has a natural instinct of when they're about to be in danger. And a lot of parents get in the way of that instinct. We're like, oh, don't do that. Oh, don't do that. Oh, get away from there. Or get away from there. Now, the obvious ones like electrical outlets and all that kind of stuff, like man-made stuff, yes, be careful of those for sure. But your kid falling down the stairs, no, they won't. They won't, unless you've missed a bunch of these steps beforehand. And then, yes, maybe they will, because they haven't built that fear response in. There's still some primitive reflexes going on inside the baby that hasn't been gone because they haven't learned. They haven't learned and they haven't developed. And to that point, I think that's a big sticking point for me when I'm dealing with kids that are now 10, 12, 14, because I can tell who didn't go through those steps. I can tell the ones that are running weird, that have this slight something is off, right? Either their emotional status is off, their mental status is off, or they're always anxious, always wired, always this, always that. It's like you can usually trace that back to something that happened when they were a kid. Again, not blaming anyone. It is what it is, and it's not the end of the world. Because again, we can retrace our steps. We can go back to development from that 0 to 2 point. So if you missed crawling, guess what we're gonna do first day? You're gonna crawl. Hey, let's go. And everyone that has never crawled always has trouble with it because it needs to be together, moving this rocking motion back and forth. Everything's got to be in sync. Everything's got to be in time. And people that didn't crawl or didn't develop well don't have that motion. So that shows up in their running, and that shows up in their tennis swing as well too, where they can't rotate off of one side. They can't go off of one foot here. They can't produce a backhand because they just don't know how to maneuver themselves in that space. And it's like, okay, good. We understand where we are. Now we backtrack. So that's where I start off with most kids that have those issues. And that ties in as well too with the nutrition, and that ties into with brain development as well.
We'll talk a little bit more about nutrition and brain development a little bit later. I just want to pause for a second and really absorb what you just said. And to me, what really strikes me is how much goes on in those early years, like you were saying, even before the child is born, everything starts to form and develop. And because often, you know, like let's say we get a kid in our sport like 7 years old, 6 years old, and we're like, oh man, like how come this guy or this girl is so athletic, and this guy or girl again like is not at all? So what is happening? And you talking about that kind of shed some light on the background, because really, like, how many coaches understand development from 0 to 6 or talk about it, or like I personally, that's the first time I'm discussing this and I'm hearing this kind of stuff. Like I'm comfortable to kind of to do certain things when I get a player, let's say at 6 and up. Okay, we can do some basic exercises and all that stuff, but before that, like most of the coaches don't see a kid, because unless it's their kids, or like you were saying, like you're babysitting for somebody, or you're going to your friend's place who have kids. But I'm just saying from teaching perspective, like you don't get access and you don't have this ability to influence, which is obviously, that's fine. Like most of the time parents give away their child to a sport at like 4, maybe I would say the earliest, like your tennis section, your whatever, soccer, gymnastics, like 4.
Right.
So that really blows my mind how much work. what blows my mind is that you can also trace, you can look at the player and you can say, oh, this person skipped that step when they were like 2. It's like, what? Right. It's like I'm just like, I'm sure I'm not the only one that does like that. Wow. Expression. Everybody who's listening is like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. And it makes sense. Like if you think about it, it just makes sense, right? Like, because you look at, it's like with anything, like you have your tennis competencies, like if you don't have a good grip, everything else is gonna fall down, right? Like it doesn't matter. Everything else is just you won't be able to produce a quality shot at a young age, right? So if you don't have a good contact point, everything falls down. So it's like, makes sense. Like it goes down to the basics of basics, like to the very simple things that we all go through. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really
cool. Yeah, 100%. And I think the larger point, which I'm going to try and get across throughout this entire thing, is that you have to, whenever you're dealing with development or whenever you're dealing with someone that wants to improve, you always have to start inside and work out. Always. Always, always, always. And what I mean by that, I'll give you the example. Let's say we have a kid that's 12 years old. They have a little bit of foot pain, a little bit of hip pain. They have a little bit of a collapse on their arch of the foot, so they have a flat foot on the one side. Most people will take that information and be like, oh, well, the arch is the problem. It's the foot because it's collapsed. And that causes a cascade up the leg where, oh, well, the knee is out of place, the hip is out of place, the spine's out of place. And that's not incorrect. That is true, because your contact into the ground will mess up everything on top of it because it's the only thing touching the ground. But for me, when I look at that, it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to take an insole and we're going to put it in the shoe, and then we're going to manually raise this arch up like this? So now the foot's like this, but the pressure is still here on the collapsed part of the arch. So we haven't changed anything. We've just changed the position. We've changed the posture. And it's like, oh, okay, we have the arch up here, but we're still pressing down here. There's still a collapse at the knee, collapse at the hip, collapse up top. It's just not as bad. So we still don't have the strength. We still don't have the range of motion through those ranges because our body hasn't learned it. There's another thing that's stopping that range of motion, but we've gone outside and tried to bring a solution in to try and solve a problem that should be worked on from inside out. Because most of the time, for those people with the arches that are collapsing, it's an organ that's swollen up. Like for most of the time, it's the gut bacteria and it's your appendix and your liver, which both sit on your right side, and it's usually your right foot that collapses. Usually, there's not many people who I've seen just their left foot collapse. It's always the right. Always, always, always. Hip pain, always the right. Knee pain, always the right. Very rarely in the left side. And we have to understand that the body is not symmetrical. Just because there's a pain here doesn't mean there's a dysfunction in this one part of the body. It could be anywhere. It could be absolutely anywhere. I used to have a shoulder pain on my left arm, or sorry, an elbow pain on my left arm over here. And this is where we get back into the controversial stuff. The pain right over here. And I did all the rehab exercises you can think of. Wrist stuff, forearm stuff, flexion, extension, going side to side. We did rotation through here. We did work on the shoulder. I did everything because I know all this stuff. It's what I do for a living. Yeah. And nothing worked. Absolutely nothing worked. I was dealing with this thing for a year. And then as I was learning and as I did a little bit more stuff, I was like, well, I'm a type 1 diabetic. So I know my organs aren't really functioning as they should. And again, this goes into something else. But any autoimmune disease, there's usually some stagnation and there's usually some bloating in the abdominal organs. And through here, I know I for sure have abdominal bloating because I've had a fat deposits here for almost my entire life up until recently. So go me. But the issue I was having is that my liver was so swollen up. When your liver is the biggest filter in your body, it processes everything: food, water, everything that you breathe in, everything you touch, everything that you digest. Your liver processes that. The liver's right here on the right side. So my right hip, my right knee, and my right ankle also didn't have a huge range of motion on it, but I thought it was a separate issue. I thought I just wasn't strong enough inside there. But now we have this entire line. We have all the way from the right foot crossing the body all the way up into the left hand. This entire line is weak. And what sits right in the middle? Your core, also your abdominal organs. So what I ended up doing was I did a little bit of care working on my liver, make sure I took out all the foods that would be causing some damage to my body. So all the seed oils, all the sugar, all the nonsense foods that you don't really need. And start putting in good things. Started putting in mineralized water. Start feeding my body the nutrition that on a cellular level it's craving, all the micronutrients, all the little metals and stuff on the periodic table that your body needs in order to function. You put those in, the swelling goes down because all your abdominal organs, they come up here. There's a blood flow line that comes up here right to your collarbones, and then it drains back down into the heart. All the blood flow, every last bit of it. So your collarbones here, if you press, like, I'll get up nice and close to the thing. So here's both my collarbones. If everyone at home, press in right on here.
I don't think it shows.
And press down.
Can you go a little bit up, a little bit higher? Yeah,
right
okay. There? Yeah, good.
Perfect. So my bone's right there, and I'm right in the middle, so I'm going to go right underneath it and press down with a little bit of force.
Okay.
And one side might be a little bit more painful than the other. They both might be painful, or neither of them will be painful, depending on who you are and what your condition is. For me right now, neither of these are painful. I can reef on it as much as I can. Actually, the right side's a little bit worse. But still, they're pretty good. They're still pretty good. The left side is your drainage point for your liver. The right side is your drainage point for your intestines. So if I'm getting left shoulder pain, left elbow pain, left wrist pain, the first place I look for now is how is your abdominal organs doing? How's your liver doing? And if there's swelling down here, and I'll do assessments and I'll press around and all that kind of stuff, if there's swelling there, there's swelling here. And now if there's swelling here, this shoulder can't rotate and move because everything's swollen up. The same way that if you take like an impact, if you get hit by a ball, it swells up. And then you lose a little bit of function in that spot until it's fully healed. But the problem is here, if it's swollen up and it stays swollen up, you don't really regain the function until the swelling's gone. So that comes back into the diet and nutrition and how we're treating our body. So if there's an issue with what we're being exposed to, either environmental-wise, either nutritional-wise, or whatever it is, and then I have this pain here and I have other pains throughout the body, they're all connected for me. And so far I'm running off of about, I want to say, a 90% success rate. And the 10% that I don't have successful is just because I haven't figured it out yet. At least that's what's going on in my head.
Yeah. So
whatever it is.
We're entering a very interesting territory and a big passion of mine, which is nutrition. And
Yes.
I'm no expert. I don't have any degrees, certifications. I don't have any scientific proof necessarily, but I love experimenting with my body when it comes to nutrition. I've,
Right.
I've I've been on pretty much every single nutrition, well, not every single, but like most of the most popular nutrition plans, that you can think of in the last like decade. So I had been a vegan. I was vegetarian. I was doing keto diet. I was doing carnivore diet. I did juice fasting. I did intermittent fasting. I did. The only thing I haven't tried, which I'll get into at some point, is just fasting, just like water fasting or dry fasting in general. Um,
Yep.
and like it fascinates me how what you eat, and but most of the time what don't you eat, how it affects your performance. Because I think it's not about, and correct me like if I'm wording it right, but to me at least, it wasn't about what I ate necessarily. It was more about what I didn't eat, when you're like in terms of
Sure.
eliminating. So every time I ate less of something, and I still can't figure out till this day what's the optimal way to eat for human beings, like not necessarily athletes. I'm a little bit digressing from this, but just on a personal level, I don't ever talk about this with my athletes because again, I have no expertise in this, but just for my own like research as a human being, I'm really passionate about it.
Yeah.
Uh, eh, so, what, like, from your standpoint, because you talked about, the inflammations and how it affects your entire body. I totally agree with you. Like, I 100% on with this whole idea that food affects, like, it changes your inner body state.
Yeah.
Like 100%. You're not gonna convince me otherwise. It's just that's the way it works. How, like, what's in your idea, in your mind? What's the optimal way for a kid, or like a tennis player, let's say, to eat? What's their ideal nutrition? And maybe you can talk about through different ages. I don't know how young you want to start.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start at like 0 to 2, because probably we'll just work our way up from there. 0 to 2, again, there's a bunch of stuff because you're a baby, you don't have teeth, you can't chew on real foods, that type of thing. But all the way up across the board, the same rules apply to me, for everyone. For everyone, it's just different variations on it depending on your age and depending on your lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. So the first absolute non-negotiable is whole foods. I don't want to see anything out of a package. I don't want to see anything out of a pantry. I don't want to see anything that when you take a look at the ingredients label, if you don't recognize what's on the ingredient label, put it away. Like if you see a bunch of additives like, oh, sodium bicarbonate and potassium benzenate and all this kind of stuff, not to say that they're bad, although they're probably not the best for you, but if you don't recognize what's in your food, don't have it, because your body is going to take that extra time to digest that food, and that extra time brings in swelling. So for a 0 to 2, like if you're going to make baby food, make it out of real food, but mush it up so the baby can have it, just like your ancestors did 50, 100, 200 years ago. Because we managed to get by for a pretty long time as a species without needing to go to the grocery store and reaching onto the shelf. This is a very recent thing. A very
Yeah,
recent thing.
yeah,
So again, number one, get right back to proper whole foods, grown from the ground onto your plate. Perfect. Done. That solves, I want to say, like 70% of nutritional deficiencies in most people, or just nutritional issues in most people, because they're always reaching for something here, something there, something here. Anything that's branded as healthy in the grocery store usually isn't. All the granola bars, not take a look at the ingredients. It's full of crap. It's full
yeah.
of
No,
garbage.
it's ridiculous. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, any like I was thinking about this earlier today because I wanted to try and prepare for this podcast. So I was thinking about when I go into the grocery store, what my plan is, because like I love the grocery store because I like to cook. So I just reach around, grab stuff, and then we just kind of mess around with it when I get home. And it's just like, oh, I made this today. It was okay, or I made this today. It was the best thing ever. But what I do is I come in, and then immediately in every grocery store is the produce section. Immediately, that's where I go first. Next, meat section. So fish, meat, organic foods, try and get the best quality foods as possible. Don't just go for the cheapest meat there just because you're on a budget, because the cheap meat usually isn't grown better. And it's the difference between like a pig or a cow that's grown up in a slaughterhouse that stays inside in a stable, is
That's right.
fed a bunch of corn to get as fatty as possible, and then they slaughter that and they put that meat on your table.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, I'm just eating crap, and it's cheaper because it's from a slaughterhouse and that's how they make their money, but you're going to do so much better by going to an actual farm or going and buying from people that grow the animals the way that animals are meant to be grown,
Yeah.
outside in a pasture, eating, moving, that type of thing. And to that point, if you or I were going to sit at home and live the way that a slaughterhouse animal does, we'd be disgusting, a mess, and full of a bunch of health problems. So why
Yeah.
would we eat an
That makes
animal that's
sense.
going
That
through those
makes
same
sense.
issues?
It's got to be pasture raised, grass fed, grass finished. Like it's the best way. Like if you're eating meat, that's the way to do it. And I think because again, like while I was doing carnivore, like I wanted to make sure that I'm giving myself the best option out there, and I was like, well, yeah, it's not like definitely, especially like these days, it's not super cheap,
Yeah,
but but if we're talking about kids, if we're talking about the young body that needs to grow and develop, and it's we talked about with Marlene as well, like she's saying that your body's like a very high-end sports car, so you want to make sure that you fuel it properly, and you put like
right.
proper nutrition, in your body, a high-end nutrition. So if the goal is to get to the top, let's start from simple things.
Yeah, of course. And back to what I was saying before, we work inside out. Don't work outside in. I have too many parents, too many kids. It's like, oh well, we want to get started in nutrition. What supplements can I get? What can I buy from the store to help out with this? Do I need this powder? Do I need this? Do I need this? It's like, no, absolutely not. Don't touch any of it, because if we're already here where we're having McDonald's, Tim Hortons on the drive-in to tennis practice, this is the problem first. We
Yeah.
focus on what we're putting into our body right now, and then as we build out, then there's opportunity for supplements. Then there's opportunities to add in other things if we need it, but most of the time we don't. And more so to your point as well too, everything's more expensive now. I'm fully aware of that. You don't have to buy as much food when the food quality is good.
Yeah,
And the
that's a
reason
good
why
point.
is that the food itself is denser in all the nutrients and all the stuff that your body craves. You're going to be satiated.
Yeah.
A steak this size that's organic grown is going to beat out a steak that's this size when it's been to the slaughterhouse, because this size is half of its garbage. This size, everything's good. Everything's good. And it ends up being somewhere around the same price as well too. So I know it's a sticking point for most family, because you look at your bag when you're finished buying all of these like hyper expensive organic this all that, but you're going to eat all of it, and all that's going to
Exactly.
go to a good place.
Exactly. And if you eliminate all the extra sugars that predominantly spike, your hunger and spike your appetite, that fake appetite. Well, not fake,
Yeah,
because you're actually you're feeding your body with garbage, and it's like, for sure, for some time it's gonna fill your stomach, but in the end you didn't give your body enough nutrition. So your
right,
body is looking for, like, what else can I, like, let's listen, you didn't give me anything good. What else is there? Right? And then
right,
what people usually do, they take another, like, bad stuff and put it in
yeah,
their body. So if I'm totally behind that. Like, I try to do the same thing when I'm like, listen, I have my healthy streaks, and I have my kind of do whatever you want kind of streaks. But when I'm
you
like
look much
into
better than when you came back from COVID, by the way. You've been putting in the work, gotta be.
it's on camera. It's a zoom camera. Like, I mean, not a zoom. It's like it's a very wide camera, so it looks like I'm a little bit thinner. than I am.
Ah, you look
Like
good. Don't worry about it.
if you see me in person, it's gonna be way worse, man. So anyway. But no, but like back to your point though. Back to your point is 100%. Like if your food is quality food, you're not gonna be hungry as often, and you're gonna
Yeah.
repair your body. Make sure it's ready for the next day of training, and 100%. It's not
Yeah, for
again.
sure.
It's not gonna be like cheap. It can be. It can be, right. You don't have to
Yeah.
necessarily buy ribeyes every day,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it can be somewhat manageable, definitely. Like it doesn't have to be
My
like
Yeah, yeah. My favorite go-to at the grocery store these days is organic ground beef.
mm, yeah,
It's
that's it.
it's
That's it.
cheap.
It's
It's like
There you go.
$10. You get a pound of it. You can put it in pasta, tacos, whatever. It feeds a bunch of different people, and you don't need as much of it because you have the healthy fats in there. Good fats because the animal is raised properly, so you can eat the fats and be okay with it.
Yeah.
That type of thing, and then it's great. Honestly, it's great. Okay, can I also touch on one point that you made with sugar, as well
Yes,
too, with the
please.
cravings
Yeah,
and all that kind
let's
of
talk.
thing?
It's all about nutrition right now. Like let's talk about like what's to eat, what's to avoid.
Yeah. I just want to talk about the process that happens with sugar and dependency on sugar because I don't think a lot of people really understand what's going on when people say don't have sugar. Like, do not have sugar. Don't have any processed sugar. Don't add anything into anything. Just don't even use it.
Yeah.
And the reason why is, and I'm gonna get a little technical here, maybe. You have gut bacteria. You have bacteria in your body. Bacteria. Bacteria loves sugar. Loves fermented foods. Loves it. Loves it. So for those of you on health kicks, you know this already because sauerkraut, kefir, all like the fermented foods that people always praise for their gut bacterial benefits.
Kimchi.
That's the
Yeah.
reason. Right? Yeah, kimchi. Like all these things, gut bacteria love. Now the problem is that usually most not so great strains. You have good strains and bad strains of bacteria in your body. Good, bad, just for the type of purpose that we'll use. Good strains of bacteria in your body and bad strains of bacteria in your body. The bad strains are usually the ones that live off of sugar. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So what happens is when you put sugar in your body, it grows because you're feeding this bacterial culture. And this bacterial culture, when it grows, it overgrows. It over ferments and it starts polluting almost polluting the body, and it causes immune responses because your body's like, what is this thing that's traveling all over my body? It's a bacterial strain. It's interfering with the process. So now we're swollen up. So you'll see people, and especially kids, that have a belly, that have like a little bit of a gut hanging over them. They may be skinny everywhere else, or they may just be like a little bit chubby, and it's like, oh, it's just kid fat, it'll go away. Oh, it's just a little bit of chub, they're fine, whatever it is. But it really isn't. There's no reason for a kid 8, 10, 12 to have a belly.
Yeah.
No reason for it whatsoever. And usually you can trace that back to the type of foods that they're eating. They're eating all these heavily processed foods. They're eating seed oils. They're eating all the stuff that's considered in a pantry that they add sugars to for taste and all this kind of thing. And it grows and it ferments inside your system. So there was a study done a while ago where they took a biopsy of someone's knee. Someone was having chronic knee pain. So they took a needle, they shoved it in the knee, they pulled it out to see what's going on inside there. What did they find? They found gut bacteria. What? What's gut bacteria doing in my knee? It's because of that process. When everything swells up inside the digestive system, it leaks out into the bloodstream, it travels around the body, and it causes immune responses everywhere. So going back to that same thing that we talked about with the elbow a little bit earlier with the liver, part of the problem. Because now I might have a bacterial strain that's trying to flow through here, but also my blood flow isn't moving very well because everything's a little bit stagnant. Just because of how swollen up we are the same way that when you're sick, you just feel like bloated. Just because there's so much immune response happening inside your system to try and get rid of whatever's causing you to be sick. It's that on a low scale, but constantly across the board. So that's when we get into issues where kids have these chronic shoulder issues, these chronic knee issues, ankle, hip, any joint whatsoever. And it usually gets traced back to what's going on inside here. Because now my digestive system, because it's bloated up, it won't let me rotate. So you'll see kids who, like, you'll drill them. It's like, rotate, 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 dissociate, get your shoulders moving, get onto this one leg, get deep into the corner, get deep into your lunge. And they just can't. They can do it, like, if you just focus on that one thing, but they can't do it in, like, a match setting, or they can't do it when they turn their brain off. Because it's not an instinctual movement. The body's telling them not to go there. Because it's dangerous. It's too swollen up. You're going to injure yourself. And that
Isn't
type of thing.
that physical issue? Because that's what I always thought. That it's like it's a lack of coordination. It's lack of disassociation. It's your lack of your body awareness.
So yes it is. But again, for the same thing that I try not to look at the symptom of the problem, because every one of those kids that are uncoordinated, don't move very well, all have the same background in terms of nutrition, where they don't know anything and they're just putting whatever's in their mouth. Or you go back even further, what we were talking about before, they didn't develop as they were kids, right? They didn't do all those basic movement patterns. So now we have a kid who's they can move. They're not like crippled. They don't have like a weird limp as they walk. Their body's figured out a way to move, but it hasn't figured out a way to move together because they missed that step when they were kids. So in terms of physical development, absolutely with that. And but this also ties in with brain development in terms of the gut bacteria and all that kind of stuff. Because if your whole body's inflamed, and a lot of people right now should be feeling this because of all the dry heat with the cold weather and that type of thing, with all these furnaces and all the heating units that are blasting in our face, everything gets dried out here, nothing moves. Your sinuses gets up, your lymphatic nodes start swelling up, blood flow stops. And what's the major symptoms? We have headaches, we have brain fog, our memory issues, we have concentration issues, we have eyesight issues because you have a huge amount of lymphatic nodes at the back of your head where your optical center is. So now if all this is swollen up, your eyes aren't going to work. And if your eyes aren't going to work, your brain, your body starts shutting down a little bit because like, oh, I can't see, I can't hear, I can't move, I can't perform. I can't perform because what? That's a great. Well, again, so for me, it starts with the nutrition. You get rid of all this shit. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Put some good food back into your body. Get some minerals into your water. Get some electrolytes into your water. Make sure you're hydrated enough to let your blood flow. That alone usually does the trick to the point where now I have a kid that can move. Now I can teach them the movement.
Okay,
right? So it's like the kid.
Sorry, keep going.
No, go. You're good.
I just wanted to slow you down a little bit, and let's maybe go. Let's kind of go like in order. Like, what's good food? Let's talk again. We're talking about your teenager. Your 10-year-old. We talked about again whole foods. Okay. We talked about organic foods. All right. What else is there? Like what like let's say let's get it maybe a little bit more specific and talk about breakfast, lunch, dinner scenario.
Sure.
For the kid. Knowing that parents might not have time, to have to spend so much time in the kitchen.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you mine. So when I wake up, usually my go-to for breakfast is eggs. Yolks included, not egg whites, because I want the healthy fats from the eggs. I have about 3 or 4. I might have it with a slice of organic toast, but I just mean toast that was or bread that was made with actual water, legit whole wheats and that kind of stuff. But I actually don't do really good on bread because bread doesn't digest very well, so most of the time I skip it.
Okay.
So now I have 3-4 eggs, and I have a little bit of fruit, and then I'll have a glass of water in the morning, and that usually gets me going pretty good. That's good for me, because I don't do very much early on in the morning. My workout time is around 10 or 11, so I'll have a snack before that. I'll have a banana, and I'll have a little bit of coffee or something as a pre-workout, and that'll get me up and going for that. So that right there, I think, is most people's nutrition in the morning. I do not have cereals. I don't have oatmeal. I don't have what's another breakfast food? Actually, I do have pancakes as long as you're making it yourself.
Peanut butter
it's not coming out.
Sandwich.
Yeah. Again, it's just as long as the peanut butter is made well. It's not like the Jif peanut butter, which is made with hydrogenated oil.
Yeah, it's your real 100% pure.
Yeah, nut butter. Yeah, that's completely fine. And again, as long as the bread is made as cleanly as possible, and if you can tolerate eating bread, because some people just can't, depending on where they are in their stage, go for it. And that's where the individuality comes in nutrition, where there's always like, oh, well, this worked for this person, this worked for this person. It's what works for you. Works for you. But that's my breakfast. So for lunch, what I had today is I went up to Longo's and I grabbed a soup, a salad, and I think 3 slices of pizza. Which immediately people are like, pizza? What? But I thought pizza was bad for you. Well,
yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. And to a certain point, they're correct, because on pizza, there's cheese, tomato sauce, and bread. What I do like about Longo's is that the way that they make most of their pizza slices, it's thin. so it's not very heavy on the bread side, so I can actually tolerate it really well. And the cheese, if you're stressed out and you don't have good bacteria and you don't have a good digestive system, you won't be able to tolerate a lot of dairy. I'm actually fortunate to the point that I can tolerate cheese and creams really well. Straight up milk that isn't that's pasteurized, not so much. So I stay away from milk a little bit more unless I can get it straight from the source. But most of the other dairies I'm pretty good with digesting. So I've made that call as a person. I like pizza. Everyone likes pizza. I'm gonna have this thing. It's my food. It's my meal. I'm not just treating it as like a tool to help with nutrition, although it is a tool to help with nutrition. I'm trying to enjoy my meal as well too, because you won't be able to last on any.
So this is more psychological for you.
A little bit of everything, because it all ties in.
Yeah.
It all ties in. Not like if you talk to anyone that goes on a diet, it's like the first thing is like, oh, I couldn't keep it up. It was too much. It's just rabbit food.
That's right.
It's like, yeah, if you hate what you're eating, you're not going to follow through on it. It is what it is. Find something that you enjoy that is healthy for you. And there's plenty of options. You just have to explore it.
Yeah, I think it's important that once in a while kids get something that they like. Not like
for sure.
Because it's psychologically, like there's so many sacrifices and so many things that they're already doing to get better at tennis and to get to another level. So I think food, sometimes we put too many restrictions on kids too early. Again, if not done right, we can have a reverse effect.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's important that, yes, we have a lot of variety. It's healthy foods, no problem. Like I have no problem with, like, I was raised on home food, from when I was a child. I never had so much takeout until I came to Canada. I was like, what? People eating takeout for every single time. But then you're like, well, it kind of makes sense because you don't have time to cook and you don't want to cook and then clean up and all that stuff. It makes kind of sense. But then you're looking at the ingredients of your takeout and then you're like, okay, so it's like you don't really know what's in there. You have no idea what kind of oils go in there. You have no idea what kind of protein goes in there, and it just makes you change a little bit and again take more control of your food. Sorry, go ahead.
I completely lost where I was. Lunch, yes. So the pizza and the soup and all that kind of stuff. So and then for dinner, what I was actually making before we jumped on the call over here, because spoilers, it's a little late. I was making steak and a homemade poutine. So homemade fries, homemade gravy. Added a little bit of cheese curds, which I found from No Frills. Probably not so healthy, but again, this is food that I know I can digest. I know I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and I'm gonna feel good. I'm not gonna feel bloated. So I'm okay with having this food for right now. That may change in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If I continue to have it, or my stress levels change, or just the type of foods that I'm putting in might be a little bit too much for my body to handle, and then I'll make an adjustment. But I know, based off of years of experience, I know what my body is feeling, and I know when there needs to be a change because there's always signs, always. And I think, so for me, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I get these red spots here and here on my sinuses, just like this, and then I get a little bit bloated underneath the chin, right through here. And again, talking about what we were talking about before, as soon as I start feeling swelling anywhere up here, I know blood flow isn't moving very well. And if blood flow is not moving very well, the first place I look is my gut and my digestive health. It's like, okay, what have I been eating? Have I been messing up a little bit? Have I been having too many of the drinks with the sweeteners? Have I been accidentally having too much sugar? Have I been not been eating the strictest foods? Have I been having takeout for like 5-6 days in a row or whatever it is? Because same thing as you. Sometimes it's just, I'm too tired. I don't want to have any cooking.
How do you
and then it's a
know what
readjustment.
particular food triggers that? Because unless you go, let's say, on a really strict elimination diet, how do you know what specific food triggers that?
I try not to think of specifics. I try and think in more categories.
Okay.
So it's my category of, okay, processed foods. I know that's going to trigger me, so I know I have to limit it. So if I notice I've been having too much recently, that's the first thing that I take out all the time. It's like, okay, I'm just going to go completely clean on processed foods, anything in a pantry, anything with oils, anything that I'm not making at home. Done. Gone. Gotcha. Second, for me, is gluten and dairy, just because not that it's bad for you, but it just takes a little bit longer to digest, and it involves a little bit more work in our digestive system. So if you're already bloated, you're already swollen, and you're already having troubles with the digestive system, that's the second thing to go, just because of how tough it is to digest. Not forever, because I'll reintroduce it, because a lot of my favorite foods will have both of those things in it. But I know
Yeah.
right now if I'm stressed out and I'm feeling bloated and I'm feeling whatever, that's got to go as well too. So that leaves me really with meats, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and carbohydrates. So like pastas, rice, and all that kind of stuff. Usually what I do is I'll go, okay, next down the list is heavy carbs. So like the heavy meals with pasta, the heavy meals with rice. But that also ties in with my activity level as well too, or for anyone that's listening, your activity level. Because if you're a tennis player and you've been training 7, 6, 5 days a week for the last 4 months, you are going to hit a wall at some point. And there's going to be nothing that you can do nutritionally, nothing you can do recovery wise. You can go all the massages, chiro, physio as much as you want to. It won't solve that problem until you take your body out of stress for a little bit, where you take it out of the need to create physiological adaptations and you take it out of the need of being stressed out on the court. And what ends up happening with those kids is usually they go way too long for way too far, and then they end up getting injured, and then now we're in injury recovery mode while still trying to play as much as possible and still trying to improve, play tournaments and all that kind of thing, where the problem could have been solved 2 months ago. What if you just take a week off? And you could still be playing at a decently high level right now. You took the week off, but it's just a week.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just a week. What are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
No, you're right. Listen, it's so important to, again, take care of your body. Everything is like available at your disposal. Your food, you can control. Okay, your sleep, you can control. Your rest, it's like everything is like so accessible and so
Yeah.
within reach that it's just like, just do it. That's it.
Yeah.
Just get a little bit of education, put a little bit of effort into getting to know what is it that you need to do, and then boom, and the information is out there. Like it's like we live in abundance
Yeah.
of information, and a good one.
Yeah.
You know.
Everything's a click away.
Yeah,
Everything's a click
it's
away.
true. It's true.
But then that
yeah,
all
go ahead. No,
no,
please
no,
go ahead.
go. That also ties in, I think, with almost people having too much information and then being too stressed out with the environment that they're in that they are unable to actually put it into action. And you might know this from your fight or flight response. So you have fight, flight, and you also have freeze for those three. So if you're in any stressful situation where your mind and your body is stressed, you will go into one of those three responses. It depends on what it is. It depends on the situation. You don't necessarily have to go into the same response every single time, but you see this across the board, especially with parents, where you come up to them and you're like, listen, your kid isn't eating what they need to be nutritionally. Not in those words, obviously, it's a little bit more stretched out, and we're talking usually for about 10, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But the response I get from parents a lot of the time is, oh, I don't have the time. Oh, I don't have this. I don't have that. I don't have this. And I'm not saying that's incorrect, because it may be correct in that period of time, but it's
Yeah.
just a priority shift. It's like, oh, well, you're rushing your kid around to 5 different programs, fitness training, this training, homeworks, tutor, this, that. Of course you don't have any time. Of
Yeah.
course you don't. But we're also not making any progress with any of these things, because now this kid is in such a state mentally where they can't learn anything because they're so stressed out, they're wired all the time.
Yeah.
And these are the kids that you and I see where like you give them an instruction and they're like, yeah, okay. And then they forget it 5 minutes later. It's like, what did I say? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
this kid is in this state. Like, and I'm guilty of this. I get mad at the kid sometimes. It's like, I just told you, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But I know deep down, it's like, it's not that they're not listening to me, it's that they can't process it because of the state that they're in. And all of that goes back to what we were saying before. You start here and then you work out. You're not going to solve any issues by going to a piano tutor, going to this tutor, going to a psychologist, going to here if you're completely stressed out all the time, your food isn't in check, you're not drinking, you're not sleeping, whatever. That has to be solved first as a person, as a good human being.
Yeah.
And then it usually just goes out from there.
Okay, so we talked about food. Okay, let's talk a little bit about nutrition.
Sure.
There goes that 10 p.m. podcast time. Let's talk about hydration. Okay,
Sure.
so what is good hydration for you? Again, we're talking for a young tennis player.
For a young tennis player, I mean, the obvious one is just drink water all the time. You don't really need any other drink. You don't need carbonated sodas. You don't need fruit juice. You don't need anything else. It's just water. Water.
How do
That's
we
the simple
know
way.
it's the right amount?
Um, there's numbers that are thrown around where it's like, oh, well, you have to eat your body weight in ounces of water. So if I weigh 150 pounds, then you have to have 150 ounces of water, and that's probably true. To be honest, if you're sweating a lot, if you're playing a lot, you're gonna have to drink more than that, obviously, because you're losing water with your sweat, and you're losing water every time you move. That type of thing. I don't have a set number in my head, but what I do know is that to look out for signs of dehydration before you get that feeling of, oh, I'm thirsty. And those signs are lack of movement, dry lips, dry nose, nasal passageways, swollen up, not able to rotate, not responding, acne anywhere on the face or any rashes on the body, everything along those lines. Because again, the brain, the skin, and the digestive system all work together. So if you have a problem with one part of your body, there's going to show up somewhere else, whatever it is. But for me, like for most kids, I think 4 liters a day should be easily doable if you're playing consistently.
Yeah.
I, I think that's a good number just to try and hit. But to add a little bit more of a complicated answer, I think it also matters what kind of water you're drinking as well too. And again, a little bit controversial.
Let's go into
The
it right
water,
away.
the water you get out of your tap, city water, is filtered and is cleaned with chlorine. That's what it is. It's chlorine. And there's probably some other stuff that they do to it as well too. I'll be honest, I haven't been in a water treatment facility, but I just know a little bit of the process. So the water goes into these treatment facilities. They chlorine it, so the stuff that they use in your pool, which has an effect on the water, because if you're going to chlorinate something heavily, you're going to mess with the molecular structure of that water. So all the minerals, all the minerals that you get, all the electrolytes that are supposed to be attached to that water, that should be in your water to let it get into your cells, like all the sodium, potassium, magnesium, all that kind of stuff, all the metals and that type of thing, need to be attached to that water for it to be used inside your system. Otherwise, there's no electrical charge to attract it to the cells, and that becomes an issue. So you end up having a bunch of tap water that's gonna, number one, almost not dehydrate you, but it's not gonna hydrate you. It's just water. It's just going in. And in a good situation, like the best case situation there, is that it does its job somewhat well. And then it does get into your cells. You're somewhat hydrated. You probably have to drink more of it than normal, whatever it is, but you're fine. The worst case situation in that point is that because of all the stuff that they use to treat the water, and because of the pipes that get from the water treatment place to your tap at home, usually made out of iron, usually made out of steel or some sort of metal, the metals will leach inside that water. It'll lose more of that electrical charge, and it'll lose all the benefits of that water with all the little molecular stuff that comes with the water. Not just the water by itself, but everything else that attaches to that water that your body needs in order to hydrate itself properly. And that's usually electrolytes across the board. So what I end up asking people to do all the time when we're talking about hydration is, listen, you're going to get a filter. Whether it's a Brita filter at home, I have one called a Santiva filter that actually mineralizes the water for me. I'll talk about that in a sec. Or whether it's just a filter that you put in the pipes underneath your tap at home, so it does that extra process for you when you're there. So it gets rid of all the extra stuff that may have happened from the treatment plant all the way to your house or your facility there. Because if you think of, in nature, stagnant water is disgusting. Stagnant water will kill you. Right? You don't take a drink out of a puddle. You don't put your glass of water down to a puddle after a rainstorm and say, that's delicious. You go to a river. You go to a stream. You go to flowing water, because there's an electrical current that goes along with that water that aids your body in getting that in. Stagnant water breeds bacteria. Stagnant water breeds disease. So if we're not having constantly running water at home, which we all turn off the taps, hopefully, because we want to save on power bills, because those are going up too, you have stagnant water in your pipes. Doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but it's just something to be aware of, right? It's not the cleanest water. It's not the best water. It's just water. And it's good if it's an emergency, but everything else, I feel, needs to either be filtered through a separate source when it's at your house, and even better, if you can remineralize that water with some sort of electrolytes, whether it's sea salt that you throw in there, whether it's fruits that you toss in so it can infuse into the water, because you can get some of the benefits out of there as well too. Like I mentioned before, I have a Santiva filter, which does that mineralization process in the actual filtration process, and it's only about 9 cups, so I always go through it, add in more, always go through, add in more, and just keep going like that. I noticed a huge difference when I started changing my water and the types that have gone in, just in terms of how my body is responding to it. Again, less bloating, less going to the washroom, not clear urine with like a little bit of a tinge, because you don't necessarily want clear urine, because that just means you're just pissing out the water, that type of thing. So in terms of hydration, that's my go-to. 3-4 liters of mineralized water, extra filtered water, making sure that you get the cleanest source going into your system. Try and avoid most city sources of water as you can, because it's probably not the best quality. We know how. I mean, I shouldn't go into politics and that type of stuff, but government usually isn't the best at taking care of your health.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, I remember just like I don't drink tap water, like, and partially because I was raised in a country where in Ukraine where it's just like undrinkable. Everybody knows it's like you can't do that. Just like when you go to
Right,
Mexico or like to any like Latin American country, you don't do that because everybody knows it's not of best quality. But when I moved to
right.
Canada, everybody were saying like, hey, yeah, like like you can drink water out of the tap, and I was like, what? So I would do that sometimes, and I would sometimes get lazy to buy bottled water, and I would notice like every time. I'm not, and again, I'm not saying that's the reason, but that's the conclusion I arrived to, that I got sick every time. When I would notice, like every time I would be on tap water for a prolonged time out of time, I would get sick.
Yeah.
So I stopped. So I stopped again. I'm not saying that's like that's the reason I got sick, but that's what I thought, and I've never
Yeah.
had like tap water since maybe like I don't know, like a couple of years ago, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Again, like you're saying, occasionally as an emergency, like I'm thirsty, there's nothing there, boom,
Yeah. Fine. That's
that's
okay.
fine. That's fine. Exactly, your body is capable of adapting to that.
Yeah, for sure.
What's your take on energy drinks, and for again for junior players, and maybe we can talk about an energy drink that any athlete can do on their own at home.
I missed the first part of that. We just lagged out. But what was that first part?
Yeah. So, what is your take on energy drinks, and what? Yeah, and what kind of energy drink can a player do on their own?
I'm gonna try and be really careful about how I answer this. Um, so I would be lying if I said I don't use energy drinks fairly consistently. I do. I use it for the purpose of getting myself into a high effort state at the gym, and solely at the gym. Never for sports and never for performance, because I don't like the feeling of having an artificial stimulant push me to a place where my body's not comfortable going while I'm performing. That's different in the gym for me, because I'm in the gym to pretty much not necessarily trash my body, but I'm there to do some damage. So as long as I can stay with a certain energy level when I'm in the gym, I'm good. However, when I was playing hockey, when I was playing volleyball, when I played tennis, if you take something extra to help yourself get up here, you will not perform at this level compared if you get up there naturally by yourself. For me, that's just a fact. If you can naturally bring your energy state up and your level up to here, you will perform better, because you get into what I'll call a flow state, where everything's coming slow, everything's rhythmic, everything's coordinated, time
Yeah.
slows down a little bit, that type of thing. And you cannot get there when you're being given a stimulant, because the stimulant's just going to shoot everything overboard, and you'll end up almost going too high. Now, at the same time, usually people that rely on energy drinks to get them through games, performances, practices, or whatever are dealing with a separate issue where they don't have enough energy, where they feel tired, where they feel overly sore, where they're not, again, going back to what we were talking about before, they're not focusing here. So we're reaching out here to provide something else to let us perform to a higher level. And every now and then it's okay, but if it becomes a reliance, it's an issue. If you need an energy drink to get going, it's an issue. If you're relying on it to, if even coffee, first thing in the morning for most adults, if you're having it and you need the coffee first thing in the morning to wake up and to be able to do your job, you're
Yeah.
not performing as well as you need to be.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of draw the line, where if I start relying on energy drinks to get me through my workout, then I've gone too far. I need to back off.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I listen. I'm personally not a big fan of like commercial energy drinks. Like your Gatorades and stuff. If an athlete takes them just like out of the bottle right away. No, if it's not diluted, like I'm not a big fan of that.
Yep.
What, and because we talked about whole foods and like quality water and all that stuff. So what quality energy drink can an athlete do on their own at home using natural ingredients?
Gotcha. So just a quick distinction. Gatorade, I wouldn't call an energy drink just because there's
Okay,
nothing really in there that would pop up your energy other than the sugar. And I think based off what we talked about before, that should be a no-go across the board
perfect.
unless you're in a state where you're like you're hypoglycemic and your sugar levels are dropping, you're about to pass out and you need something to pick yourself
Yes,
back up.
that's right. That's right. That makes sense.
I think that's separate over here. That is also easily solved if you need energy in a crunch by just having some fruit.
Yeah.
Same thing, sugar, natural sugar, it'll break down a lot better in your body. You'll be able to use that energy a lot more. And
Hmm.
it's not that oh my God, I forgot the word about it. It's the processed high fructose corn syrup. That's it. That's being used as a sugar replacement because it's natural sugar that's found inside the fruit. That part, that's there. Energy drinks, straight up like Monster, Red Bull, and that kind of stuff was kind of what I was alluding to before in
Yeah.
terms of
No,
that.
that's
Uh,
that's. Yeah, we all
yeah,
know
it,
about that.
yeah, they're garbage for you. They're not good for
Yes.
you whatsoever. Don't take them. I do take them. I'm telling people actively not to take them. I'm trying to get off the energy drinks myself, honestly, but I have a little bit of a caffeine problem. But that's amazing. That's something I'm working on this year. But for stuff at home, I think the easiest go to is coconut water,
Okay.
just because of the potassium. So it's a huge electrolyte, and it's usually one of those ones that you'll lose pretty quickly as an athlete. And you'll know you're low in potassium when your heart rate shoots up through the roof just at rest. So if you're sitting down like we are right here, probably not in conversation, but just sitting and chilling, and you notice your heart is pumping, it's like at 60, it's at 70, it's at 80 beats per minute, maybe a bit higher if you're a younger kid because it's supposed to be higher,
Mm.
you're probably low in potassium because it's one of those things that helps regulate that process of just slowing everything down and getting there. And that will actually give you a little bit more energy because your heart rate will slow down and your body isn't working as hard. So coconut water is the first thing. Sea salt is the second thing because again, sodium, huge. Huge, huge, huge for performance. I don't know where we got this idea that salt is bad for you. It is not. It's probably one of your best performance enhancers
Yeah,
that
especially
you
for an athlete.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Every time you sweat, you're getting rid of salt. Every time you go to the washroom, you're getting rid of salt.
Exactly.
Salt is one of those major nutrients inside your body that powers your nervous system. It powers everything in your nervous system. If you don't have salt, you can't contract the muscle. You can't move. It is what it is. So if you're on a low salt diet, get rid of it. Now, that being said, don't have table salt, have sea salt, have Himalayan salt, have the natural salt that's found in the earth. Don't have the stuff that was made in a lab that's sodium chloride. That's not going
That's
to
right.
help you very much either for the same reasons that we talked about with the chlorine filtering out the water and all that kind of stuff. So in that sense, salt, coconut water, and then you can add in something a little bit acidic like apple cider vinegar. You can add in a little bit of fruit to add in some flavor, whatever it is. But that's usually pretty good enough as it is. Coconut water and salt. That usually takes care of most people's issues for energy. But again, if it's a consistent thing where you're running out of energy and you don't have the energy to perform and you're waking up tired, you're stiff, you're sore, all this kind of thing, we have to look elsewhere because it's probably not just that problem. Even though we're dealing with this symptom, there's probably something else going on, whether it's you're not getting enough sleep, you're not in the right environment for sleep, which I actually want to touch on in a sec as well too,
Yes.
where you're not where you're just the foods that you're putting in aren't doing anything. Your activity level is too high. Your neurological state is too high. Maybe you just broke up with your girlfriend and you're not in the right state of mind to actually compete and perform. And no amount of outside supplements are going to get you out of that state for a long period of time. So it is something you have to deal with here first, depending on who you are and depending on what it is, and then you build out from there. So the short answer is the coconut water, the salt, and whatever, like the fruit to add it in. The long answer is you shouldn't need an energy drink as an athlete. I don't think. In a perfectly functioning world, you shouldn't need it. But if there is a situation where there is like the need for it, that's what you do. You stay as healthy and as whole as possible, and then you work your way to find back to get back to your center, and then build out from there again.
Even let's say you're playing Australian Open, like where it's extremely
Yeah.
hot. You believe that the athletes today, and correct me like at any point, feel free to jump in. You believe that athletes today are using energy drink because they're not at an optimal state yet. So perhaps like in 20 years that wouldn't be necessary. Is that because we haven't evolved enough? They're not using, they're not optimizing how their body performs to the fullest potential yet. Is that where you're going with this, or?
Kind of, but I also think when you get to a professional level, to be lag out here. Waiting on video, waiting on video. Can you hear me, Bogdan?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
I think we're
So
back to normal. Yeah.
there we go. Um, I think when you get to a professional level of athletics,
Hmm.
I don't think anyone performing is at 100% health. Anyone across the board, just because with the demands of the sport and the rigors that goes on with practice, training, financials, everything. That's not just in tennis. I think that's in every sport across the board. So in terms of being optimal as a high performance athlete, I don't think that exists.
Hmm.
Which is why I say, like, again, if it's a constant thing, there's something else that you can work on, most likely. Will you ever be 100%? No, I don't think so. And I don't think that's going to change in the next 20 years. I think it's actually going to get worse. That's just my opinion on it. I don't really have anything to back that up, because I think that we're almost driving people to be more specialized at a younger age, which is going to lead to more burnout across the board when they get to like this breaking point at like 14, 16, 18, like before they even get to the pros. And if they make it past that point because they've done all the right things as kids, they're even going to go farther and break more and break more and break more. Like you say, you've seen Djokovic, Nadal, all these guys have been playing the sport for 20 years. They're all beat up.
Yeah.
They're all beat up. And it's I don't think it's any fault on their team or any fault of the player. I think that's just the rigor of the sport and how much they have to compete and play to stay at the top of their sport for that amount of time. Like, being a professional athlete is tough. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like, across the board, like the LeBron James' ability to stay in the league and perform at this level for 20 years at this point is insane. That's insane. I don't know if you're ever going to see that again from another professional athlete as long as I live, because I don't think it's even possible. The guy's like 38 years old and he's running, dunking, slamming down balls, moving all over the place, jumping like crazy. That's insane. That's insane. But then you look at what he does in the background to keep his health. Like, he spends, I think the number a couple of years ago was 1 million. I'm sure it's way more than that. I'm sure it's like 5-6 million a year just on recovery, nutrition, chef, massage, everything. Everything. And that's just to keep him the ability to play at his level at this age. And he's nowhere where he was 5 years ago, but he's still playing at a decent level.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess it's a long answer to the question. But I think in kids, we have more room, like especially if they're below 15, 16 and we're not at like these national selections and U18 qualifiers and we're not worried about scholarships right now. If we're at this age and there's issues, we can back off.
Yeah.
Back off when they're young. We don't have to push through anything. I don't like seeing 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds in the chiropractic or the physio office.
Yeah.
Because if we've gotten to that point, it's too much.
No, I agree.
It's too much.
I agree.
So again, like I don't think there's a set answer for any of this. It's kind of like we're always trying to be as close to 100% as we can, but do it in the right ways by starting from here and working out. Because again, if we're using tools and energy drinks and whatever to get our performance to a certain level, then you're not really at that level. It's a false performance.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's definitely something to think about. Because ideally, you don't want, like, again, like you're saying, there is probably so many things you can do better. You can optimize to perform on a different level other than taking, like, again, supplement, like you were mentioning before, or that energy drink or something else. There is no pill, that's going to make it easier. Like, so it's definitely something to think about for all of us, for coaches, for parents, for players, if they're a little bit older. What's your take on... Yeah.
And then just to add on to that for a sec, it's the same thing for every adult client that comes in and wants to drop weight. Like for them, like if they have this big goal, they've been unhealthy for like a decade, 2 decades, whatever it is. There's all this built up backlog of stuff that they did during that time that now we have to address. And so everyone thinks like, oh, well, weight loss or performance is really simple. You just eat less and you perform more, which should be true. It should be. Absolutely should be true, but it's never the case because there's too much stuff going on in the background. If you've been eating McDonald's for 20 years, you're not going to lose weight like this because your body isn't performing whatsoever at all. You haven't been putting in the right nutrients. You're not getting performance out of your body. So the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years of your progress and your journey is going to be terrible. You're going to get a bunch of joint pains. You're going to be feeling like garbage as you make progress. You're going to make a little bit of progress like this, and then you're going to jump down like this. And you're going to make a little progress like this, and then you're going to jump down like this. And people get to this point, they think they're doing well, and then they hit a snag, and they're like, oh, well, all this is nonsense. I can't do any of this. This is bullshit. This isn't working, whatever it is. And they never get to the point where they rise back up again because they've given up down here. And now they're almost in a worse place than when they started. And this goes across the board for high performance athletes as well, too. Like, I remember this kid like 5, 6 years ago. I was getting on him. It's like, listen, bud, you're here 7 days a week. You're at the club 7 days a week. You're training 6 to 8 hours every day out of the week. You're 12. You do not have to put in this many hours.
Man.
You don't. And no one was really pushing him. He was pushing himself. He wanted it, but his body was falling apart as he was doing it. And then he got to the point where it's like, oh, we're a year in. He didn't listen, by the way. We're a year in, and he's injured constantly. Oh, my shoulder hurts. Oh, my knee hurts. Oh, I can't move. He lost all of the spring in his step. He lost his mental ability to focus when he's playing because everything's so swollen up and everything's so clogged. And I haven't checked up on him in like a few years, but I'm pretty sure he gave up the sport. And which is a real shame because those are the type of kids that are going to be big if they do well at a young age, if they build the right habits and all that kind of stuff. That kid was going to be someone because he had the will to want to do it. He wanted to do it, and that's key.
Yeah.
It's a tough situation.
With that mindset, he'll achieve something in life. For sure.
Oh, for sure.
In other
field.
Sure. But it's a shame to lose him from our sport or from any sport for that matter, 100%. Rob, I want to
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's all good. I just wanted to kind of segue a little bit into sleep because you wanted to touch on sleep as well and how it affects performance and, like the lack of which can cause, again, injuries, and maybe you can talk a little bit about your sleep.
So I mean, sleep, the major thing with sleep is that it's your biggest waste removal process of the body. And what I mean by that is when you go to sleep, everything in the brain through your glymphatic system, which is your lymph nodes inside your head and your spine, and your lymphatic system, which clears out all the waste products from every cellular process that happens. So every nutrient that goes into a cell, all the waste products that come out of that cell, that's your lymph system and that's your glymphatic system that gets rid of all that blood flow. Your sleep, and especially your deep sleep, like deep delta wave sleep, is the sleep that drains all that stuff from the brain that allows you to wake up refreshed, allows you to kind of wake up with a clear head. It helps repair everything in your body because your inflammation processes are going on while you get into deep sleep. And again, key, deep sleep, all that kind of stuff. Your muscles will heal, your fascia will heal, your nervous system gets a chance to kind of relax and simmer down to here so it's not riding high throughout the day. So if you're completely stressed out and you take a nap, it should bring you down to about here so you wake up feeling refreshed. The problem these days, one of the major problems that I deal with most adults, most parents, most kids, is that they are not getting deep sleep at all. And I can throw myself into this boat as well too. I had insomnia for about 3 years when I was in nursing school and all that kind of thing, where I would just be laying there at like 11 o'clock because I had to be up at 5 o'clock to go in for my shift. And I'm just laying there and I'm trying to fall asleep and I'm trying to relax myself, but I'm just staring at the ceiling and I'm moving my legs and I'm restless and I'm shaky. And whatever I do, I just can't fall asleep. I don't have a switch to turn it off. And for a lot of kids and a lot of adults, sometimes they don't realize that they're in that state and they don't realize that when they're waking up that their tongue is falling into the back of their throat because they don't have any movement of their tongue because everything I'm going off topic here, but everything's so stagnant up top through here that you can't breathe properly, you can't move properly, you can't do anything properly, so the body doesn't shut down properly because it stays in an alert, stressed out state that doesn't allow you to go to sleep, because in the body's mind, oh, they're stressed. I can't breathe. I can't move. I don't have the right nutrients in me. I have to stay awake just in case something happens. I'm in this state and I can't leave it. So the problem becomes that we never get down to this point to recover. And one night, fine, whatever. You stayed up all night with friends, you're in a stressed out state, fine. You're going to feel like garbage the next day, then you go back to bed and everything will be okay. When it happens day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, and what I was talking about the tongue just now is, again, people that snore, you're not supposed to snore. You're not supposed to at all. Snoring is either the tongue is getting right into the bottom of your throat and it's flapping every time you take a breath in and it's vibrating, so you're not getting a breath in, you're not getting a breath out. Right? So now your body doesn't have any oxygen going in. So your body's trying to try and get as many deep breaths as it can to try and bypass that tongue to get the oxygen in, but you're not getting good quality sleep because the noise is going to affect you, and you don't get into that deep sleep, so you stay in this alpha wave sleep. So when you wake up, you feel even more tired than when you went to bed. Like, what's going on? I was just in bed for 8 hours. That's a great question. So again, it comes back into main thing, nutrition, but also the environment that you sleep in. And everyone knows like good sleep hygienes, like turn off the lights, go to bed at this time, turn off the screens, make sure that you don't have any outside lights coming in, be in a somewhat cool environment, all that kind of stuff. That's all normal. But what happens if we get to that point and it still doesn't work? Now we have to kind of expand our minds a little bit. Okay, what else it might be interrupting my sleep? The main go-to right now that I've been kind of preaching to every kid that I talk to that has dry lips, dry mouth, and is dehydrated is put a humidifier in your room. And the reason why, and keep your windows closed, by the way, especially in winter, the reason why is that cold air does not hold humidity or water very well at all. So compared to Florida in the middle of summer where it's humid, you can feel the water in the air, it's heavy, compared to when you walk outside right now, everything's dry. Everything's dry. And we live right next to a lake. Everything's still dry.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So now you're breathing in this dry air, and the moisture that you normally have in the air would normally hydrate your sinuses and hydrate this nasal passage and your throat and everything that lets air get down into your lungs and that type of thing, but that's not happening because it's dry. So everything kind of burns up as we're going in. So you end up seeing kids that have sniffles all through winter. Like they're always this type of thing. Or they always have a sore throat, or they always have their lips dry, so they have chapstick on them to try and alleviate that symptom. Oh, my lips are dry, I need my chapstick. Whatever it is. But what's actually happening is you have no water in the air where you are, because the heat's blasting, you have dry hair outside, you go to a school, they have the old furnaces that just blast heat at you as you're going, which dries out the air even further. At one of the tennis clubs that I work with, we have like these ancient heating pads that go all the way across the back courts, and it feels like you're in a sauna as you get back in there. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. You can't breathe, you can't move. And then, so the body gets dehydrated, and again, when it's dehydrated, it's stressed. When it's stressed, you can't fall asleep because your body doesn't want to go to sleep when it's stressed out, when there might be danger. Because you still have that primitive monkey brain in the back there that says, I don't have food, I don't have water, I can't relax. I'm not in a good place to relax, I'm about to die. You're not about to die, but that's what your brain is saying.
Yeah. So it's all
that's
interconnected, like
of course.
Like you were saying, environment, your food, your hydration throughout the day. It's very interesting. Again, it shows you the importance of that to make sure that you're maintaining every day, and you're controlling your environment, you're controlling what you're eating, you're controlling how you hydrate, what you hydrate, what kind of water you hydrate yourself with, and to make sure at the end of the day that you have a quality sleep so you can perform to a certain standard the next day. That makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And then on top of that, most other sleep issues, like let's say you're in the middle of summer and you can't fall asleep, usually what that is for a lot of athletes is that they're missing key electrolytes. So again, sodium. So what I like to do with most athletes that have sleep issues is immediately sea salt, put it in some warm water, let it dissolve, drink the water. Get some salt back into your system. Give your nervous system some fuel to allow everything to calm down a little bit. See how it goes. That usually does it for a lot of people. Second is magnesium. Most people are deficient in magnesium because where do we get magnesium? We usually get it from the soil. Most of the stuff that we grow these days aren't grown in great soil, so we're not getting the right nutrients out of the soil into the food. Magnesium is just one of those things where it's so useful across the body. It's involved with so many different reactions and so many different processes. If you don't have it, again, the body goes into a stress state where it's like, oh my God, I need magnesium. And a lot of people get these cravings for salt, for magnesium, through chocolate, through chips, through salty foods, through salty snacks. And it's your brain's like inherent ability to be like, oh, I'm missing this key nutrient. What do I remember that has this nutrient? What can I reach for? And unfortunately for most people, whether you can just put salt in water, you can just put salt on your foods and that solves the problem. Most people reach for a bag of chips just because it's easier, it tastes good, you get that dopamine hit from whatever
That's
they
right.
put in the chips, the type of
Plus,
flavors.
yeah,
that type of
I
thing.
was gonna say the other chemicals that they put, because there's departments that work on like what they put in food so that they have what's the word
Perfect taste or
yeah,
whatever.
like that perfect taste,
Yeah.
that addiction, that's what I was looking
Yes,
for,
yes,
like
yes.
to really form the addiction. And yeah, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, and that's my point with all food that gets made. Like it's being made to be sold. And not, again, not a political argument. That's not a capitalist argument, whatever it is. It's
Yeah,
just the
yeah,
reality
yeah,
of the situation.
yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, so it's just being careful about all that stuff. So sea salt, magnesium. Outside of that, I know a lot of people tend to go to melatonin with sleep issues, and there's a few things about melatonin I just want to be clear with everyone. It's not a sleep pill.
Mhm.
Um, melatonin is more of a hormone than it is a mineral or something that should be taken over the counter. Um, just because of how much it does inside the body. So the first thing that melatonin is known for doing is messing with your circadian rhythm. And for those of you that don't know your circadian rhythm, it's just your body clock. So
Yeah,
let's say if I went over to Ukraine right now, my body clock would be a little bit messed up because I'm assuming it's not 10 p.m. or whatever time it is right now in
it
Ukraine.
is not. I can confirm.
Sorry.
Yes,
Whatever it is. But
it's
just
plus
that
seven
change of
hours. Yeah.
+7. Yeah. So just that change of going from, okay, it's this time, okay, now it's this time. That messes with your rhythm. And then there's other things throughout the day that'll mess you with your rhythm just naturally, like these lights that I have above me right here.
Yeah.
The way you view lights and the way that your sensory system takes in information has a huge effect in terms of your mental well-being and your state of mind. So if I'm going to leave these bright white lights on for the next 3 hours, I'm not going to fall asleep until 3 a.m. just because these lights are telling my brain it's daylight. So now,
Yes.
as soon as I turn the lights off, it now needs to go through like a 2 hour process. Okay, now we're shutting down. Now we're adding in all like the nighttime hormones. We're starting this process of going to bed and all that kind of thing. And that goes the same for television screens. That goes the same for video games. That goes the same for phones. That's why you don't use screens before you go to bed. Or if you are, at least put a blue light filter on it so you're not getting as much of a strain on your eyes. But don't be fooled. You
Yeah.
looking at a screen will affect your body processes.
Well, that's
Just
how
as
they
it is.
raise chickens, or like any other like animals, like that. They basically turn on the light, feed the chicken, turn off the light, repeat the process multiple times during the day so that the chicken thinks it's another day. Well,
Yeah.
it's like the same, like 12 hours, but they're just repeating it. It's like, that's the the base of it, pretty much.
Yeah, and if you want to go even darker, that's what they do in Guantanamo Bay as well too. It's all the prisoners. They keep them lights on.
There you go.
They
There you
don't
go.
turn them
So,
off.
so it's yeah, it's it's a real issue, like especially with the invention of this, it's becoming an addiction. And speaking of your environment, like how many kids fall asleep with this, like
Yeah.
that's the last thing they use before they go to sleep. So it's
And I'll get back to that phone stuff in a sec because there's way more about that I want to talk about. But going back to the melatonin for a sec, it's also a huge, huge anti-inflammatory. It's a really good anti-inflammatory. And that's one of the major reasons that when you sleep, this melatonin hormone, as it goes around, aids with the rest of the body, aids in blood flow. It lets inflammation happen and lets it go through its process. So again, one of the things that I like to do with people that have major sleep issues, like they can't
yeah.
fall asleep, like insomnia, whatever it is you take melatonin every hour on the hour for a week and see how it goes. Because your body is going to be so inflamed with the lack of sleep for a long period of time that it needs systemic anti-inflammatories to bring the swelling down to a point where it's like, okay, now I can relax. Now my body can kind of
Yeah.
calm down, stay in this state here, and then I allow myself to get to sleep.
Yeah.
And again, these are all issues that have popped up in the last 30 years,
Mm.
maybe 40, maybe 50, along with like everything that you're saying with the phones, technology, and everything. We
Yeah.
have so much at our disposal that we're losing the ability to be human. And when you lose the ability to be human, everything suffers. Your mental
Yeah.
health suffers, your physical health suffers, your emotional health suffers, everything. So it's one of those key things. But then going back to the phone that you mentioned briefly,
Yeah.
having the phone right next to you, what's coming out of that phone? Radiation.
Waves. Yeah. Radiation.
Radiation everywhere. Every Bluetooth device, all the kids walking around with AirPods inside their ears. I don't actually cringe, but it's just like, well, there's radiation going right into your brain. And it's not a lot. Like, let me get that out of the way. It's not like it's, oh, well, you're gonna turn into a mutant. You're gonna wake up with 14 fingers and 12 toes. It's not that, but it's low grade radiation over a long period of time, and
That's
that
right.
absolutely has an effect, especially on younger kids. They're
Yeah.
more prone to adapt to it. Cells are more prone to adapt to it. DNA will be damaged by radiation, sometimes irreversibly. And that part I have to be absolutely clear. If you are a parent, do not let your kids near any piece of technology for as long as you can. Let them be kids. Let them
Yeah.
go outside. Let them play with toys. Let them go to the playground. Let them play in the creek. Let them get dirty. Don't place them in front of a screen. Don't place them in front of an iPad. Don't give them a phone. They're going to be fine. We've raised kids as a species for hundreds of thousands of years. We
And we
are
have
able to
survived
raise
so
kids.
far.
Trust in your natural instincts. You are
That's
able to
it.
do
That's it.
it.
Yeah, natural selection will prevail. And listen.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
listen, Rob. It's been it's been
Been a
quite
long
some
time.
time, like, yeah. And I gotta tell you that I can I can see this conversation going on, and
Yeah,
because
let's stay
there's
here till
so
12. No
much.
problem.
And but no, listen, like, jokes aside, like, you have so much to say, and there has to be a part two.
Sure.
There has to there
No
has to be
problem.
a part two, because I have way more questions to ask, um, and I really want to dive into other stuff, like, and go into a little bit more details, because, like, every topic you speak with so much passion and so much knowledge and expertise that I really want to know more, and I'm sure whoever survived and finished this and finished this podcast, I'm sure they will want more as well. So
Leave
listen,
a comment, like, and subscribe.
you know the drill, you know the drill. So on that note, I want to finish, especially on your last message, to the crowd. Just let kids be kids, and leave them alone from technologies as far as you can, as long as you can, and that's a great message to finish on. So thanks for
Perfect.
coming.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.